Show me your ticket. The demand slices through the chatter of the lobby, sharp and deliberate. Jamie blinks, his pulse steady but his chest tightening. He had already shown it once, but the manager's voice carries the weight of accusation, not curiosity. People nearby pause mid-step, their eyes drifting toward him, searching for a reason behind the sudden command. I showed it when I came in, Jamie replies evenly, keeping his voice calm. That's not what I asked, the manager snaps, stepping closer, tone rising as if volume could force guilt into existence. Let me see it again, now. Phones lift quietly, lenses catching the exchange. Jamie feels the weight of dozens of eyes pressing into his skin, dissecting him without knowing his name. The unfairness simmers. He knows no one else has been stopped. No one else asked twice. You're singling me out, Jamie says, his words steady but edged with warning. The manager smirks, crossing his arms. If you really bought a ticket, you've got nothing to hide. Whispers ripple across the lobby. A cough, a chuckle, someone muttering, troublemaker. The crowd is shifting, but not for him. Jamie straightens, jaw tight. He can feel the narrative building, painted on him by a stranger with authority. Suspect, outsider, liar. And yet he refuses to give in. The manager leans forward, voice dripping with suspicion. So, let's see it. Or maybe you don't have one at all. The sound spreads like wildfire, murmurs mixing with faint laughter. A teenager nudges his friend, whispering, he's probably sneaking in. Another voice hisses, why don't they just leave him alone? Jamie hears every word. The ones who defend him are drowned out by those eager for spectacle. Fingers tap against phone screens as strangers record. Hungry for drama they won't have to live through. The lobby becomes a theater in itself. Jamie, the unwilling star. Some avert their gaze, unwilling to step in but unwilling to look away. Their silence speaks volumes, a kind of complicity sharper than words. The manager thrives under the attention, puffing his chest. See how quiet he gets? He calls out, performing for the audience now. That's what guilty looks like. Jamie swallows hard, holding his composure, though the air grows heavier with every passing second, the eyes pressing deeper into him. Answer me. The manager's voice booms, echoing across the lobby. Where's your proof? Don't tell me you walked in here thinking no one would notice. Jamie's throat burns, the sting of shame biting into him. His calm voice falters under the sheer volume aimed directly at him. I told you, I paid. You told me, the manager repeats mockingly, sneering as he circles Jamie like a predator. Words are cheap. Tickets aren't. Laughter slips from the crowd. Someone says loudly, he probably slipped past while they weren't looking. Another chuckles. Classic. Jamie stands there, heat crawling up his neck, his dignity stripped one accusation at a time. It doesn't matter that his ticket sits neatly on his phone. It's the assumption of guilt that cuts the deepest. The manager presses harder. See, no ticket. Just another person trying to get something for free. His voice drips with venom, framing Jamie as a thief before strangers who know nothing about him. Jamie grips his phone, his hands shaking, not from fear but from rage buried beneath restraint. He wants to shout, to demand fairness, but he knows the stage has been set. No matter what he says, in their eyes, he is already on trial. And the verdict is humiliation. Inside, Jamie feels the storm raging. He wants to scream, to rip apart the false image being forced onto him. Instead, he keeps his face steady, his voice measured, though his jaw tightens with each insult hurled his way. His eyes burn, not from tears, but from the fire of holding himself together. He scans the crowd, the gawking faces, the judgment etched into their stares. For a split second, he wonders if anyone sees him as human or just as the stereotype the manager paints. Why aren't you answering? The manager jeers, mistaking Jamie's silence for weakness. Jamie exhales slowly, knuckles white around his phone. He thinks of the countless times he's endured moments like this, of every instance where dignity was traded for survival. But tonight feels different. Tonight, the weight on his chest is too heavy to ignore. The laughter, the whispers, the piercing gaze of strangers, it all presses down on him, demanding he either break or rise. Jamie's lips part, but the words don't come yet. Not yet. He knows that once he speaks, there will be no going back. The tension coils inside him, snapping taut as the manager's voice rings out one last time. Either show the ticket or admit you don't belong here. Jamie lifts his head, eyes sharp, voice low but carrying enough weight to hush the air around him. I've had enough. It isn't shouted. It isn't loud. But the conviction in his tone cuts through the noise more than volume ever could. The manager falters, caught off guard by the shift in energy. Jamie no longer looks like a man on the defensive. He looks like someone who refuses to bow. The crowd leans in, sensing a turn. The silent endurance has ended. The storm within Jamie is no longer contained. His clenched jaw eases only enough to form the words he's been holding back. You want proof? Fine. But understand this. Once I show it, you'll regret ever asking. Ticket, please. Jamie hands it over without hesitation, keeping his eyes down, hoodie pulled just low enough to mask his face. The cashier scans it, oblivious to the man standing in front of her, the man the world would recognize in an instant if he wasn't careful. For tonight, he isn't the Hollywood star splashed across billboards. He isn't the award-winning actor whose smile fills magazine covers. He's just Jamie, one man among many, hoping the shadows of the cinema will swallow him whole. He chooses a quiet corner, slipping through the lobby as if he doesn't belong. A deep breath escapes him. To the strangers bustling around, he's another customer. To himself, he's clinging to the one thing money can't buy, normalcy. Just tonight, he whispers under his breath. No cameras, no headlines. Just a movie, but even here, the weight of the world follows. As Jamie waits in line for popcorn, his thoughts drift, uninvited, to the invisible baggage he carries. Success didn't shield him, it never does. The stares, the whispered comments, the cautious distance some people keep as if his presence alone demands suspicion. He remembers being asked twice for ID at a bar, though he was nearly 40 at the time. He recalls the cab that drove past him on a rainy night, only to stop for someone else seconds later. Even on red carpets, dressed in luxury, he'd overhear murmurs about whether he really fit the part. Fame brought applause, yes, but racism remained a shadow that clung tighter than the spotlight ever could. He shifts uncomfortably, watching the man in front of him order snacks without so much as a second glance from the clerk. When his turn comes, Jamie braces. Not because he expects trouble, but because history has taught him to. A smile forms on his lips anyway, practiced and polite, the kind of smile that says, I'm not a threat. I just want what everyone else wants. Invisible battles, fought daily, even in the simplest of places. All Jamie wants is popcorn, a seat in the dark, and a story that isn't his own. No flashing lights, no microphones shoved in his face, no endless questions about race, fame, or identity. Tonight is about silence, the soft crunch of snacks, the comfort of anonymity. He longs for it the way others long for luxury. But to him, it's rarer than gold. Sitting in a theater unnoticed feels like freedom. If only the world would let him breathe without reminding him, everywhere he goes, that he's always being measured, always being watched. As he walks past a couple, Jamie catches their glance. It's quick, fleeting, but sharp enough to sting. They don't see the actor, the philanthropist, the man who built his career from nothing. They see only his skin, and in that split second, judgment fills the silence. Assumptions stack higher than truth ever could. He knows that look, one he's faced in airports, hotels, even in his own neighborhood. The thought hits him hard. Before they know his name, his story, or his worth, strangers decide who he is. And it's never who he truly is. The theater gleams with elegance, polished floors, velvet seats, chandeliers hanging like trophies of wealth. A space built to make patrons feel important. Yet beneath the shimmer lies an unspoken divide. Here, class and privilege mingle freely, but bias lingers, invisible and sharp, deciding silently who belongs and who doesn't. Enjoy your show, sir. The cinema manager beams at a man in a tailored coat, shaking his hand before sending him off with a smile. Then his eyes land on Jamie. The warmth disappears, replaced with a sharp stare that slices like glass. Jamie feels it instantly. The tilt of the head, the narrowing of the eyes, the way the manager lingers just a moment too long. It's not welcome. It's suspicious. The lobby hums with chatter, but under that noise, the silent message rings clear. You don't belong here. Jamie adjusts the hood over his head, trying to stay invisible, yet the gaze follows him, measuring him differently than everyone else. A family strolls by, greeted with cheer. A woman drops her ticket and the manager bends quickly to pick it up with a laugh. When Jamie walks past, the only sound he hears is the scrape of disapproval in the man's throat. It isn't just watching, it's waiting for him to make a mistake. Jamie presses his lips together, knowing this isn't new. He's walked into this same judgment in airports, restaurants, and stores. Tonight, it just wears a new face. At the snack counter, Jamie orders popcorn and a drink, keeping his voice steady. ID? The manager interrupts before the clerk can ring it up. Jamie blinks. For a soda? House policy, the man replies flatly. Behind him, two teenagers laugh while ordering nachos. No one asks them for proof of age. A suited couple buys wine with nothing more than a smile exchanged. But when the clerk finally moves to swipe Jamie's card, the manager leans forward again. Let me see it one more time, he insists, his tone sharpened. Jamie slides the ID across without protest. His hand stays calm, but his chest tightens. Twice checked for no reason other than standing in the wrong skin, the line grows awkwardly quiet. A man coughs behind him. Someone whispers, "Why's he bothering him?" The manager doesn't answer. He studies the card longer than necessary, then tosses it back across the counter as though he's done Jamie a favor. Jamie nods politely, gripping the bag of popcorn tighter than he means to. The thought creeps in. Success doesn't matter here. Status doesn't matter here. Tonight, in this space, he's just another black man being tested. Jamie walks toward the theater doors, but the sound of footsteps trails behind him. Not friendly, not casual, deliberate. The manager's voice mutters low, sharp enough to sting. Gotta keep an eye on him. Jamie doesn't turn, though every nerve in his body wants to. Instead, he focuses on steady breaths, popcorn in hand, ignoring the weight crawling up his spine. Every move he makes, hand in his pocket, glance at his phone, feels magnified under that watchful glare. Like he's already guilty of something he hasn't done. A group of friends walks by, laughing. Completely unseen by the same eyes that track Jamie's every step, the silent truth cuts deep. He's not a customer in this man's eyes. He's a problem waiting to happen. Jamie forces a faint smile, telling himself it's nothing. He's dealt with worse. Journalists with loaded questions, police pulling him over for no reason, neighbors clutching purses at the sight of him. Not tonight, he whispers to himself, trying to shake it off, but the unease doesn't leave. It lingers beneath the polite mask he wears, pressing down harder than he wants to admit. He swallows the frustration with a handful of popcorn, pretending the taste is enough to drown out the bitterness in his chest. At the theater door, Jamie nods politely, offering a soft, "Evening." The manager doesn't return the courtesy. His stare follows instead, heavy and unyielding, like a challenge unspoken. Jamie steps inside. But he can still feel it, the man standing there, arms crossed, daring him to misstep. The hostility doesn't need words. It's written in silence, carved in posture, stamped in every glance. Jamie exhales slowly, gripping his ticket stub as if it anchors him. The movie hasn't even begun, but the tension already fills the air like static before a storm. Jamie settles into his seat, sighing as the lights dim, yet even here in the dark, peace doesn't come. Each glance over his shoulder carries the same warning. This night isn't simple, and this conflict isn't over. Something heavier is building, and Jamie knows he can't ignore it forever. "Show it again!" The manager's voice cut across the entrance like a blade, louder than the chatter around them. Heads turned. The movie posters on the wall became nothing but background to the real show. Jamie standing frozen, popcorn in one hand, phone in the other, caught under a spotlight he never asked for. "I already gave it to you," Jamie said, steady but soft, hoping the reason might cool the fire. The manager took a step closer, projecting his words for all to hear. "If you had, we wouldn't be standing here. Ticket again." Conversations died mid-sentence. A couple paused with their sodas half raised, staring over the rims of their cups. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering. Jamie's pulse thudded in his ears. He could feel the weight of dozens of eyes pressing into him, waiting for a scene, expecting him to fold. The demand wasn't about a ticket anymore. It was a declaration. "You don't belong here until I say you do," he swallowed, forcing calm into his tone. "Sir, you've seen it. Let me take my seat." But the manager leaned back, arms folded like a judge before sentencing. "Then it shouldn't be a problem to show it again." The theater lights above hummed faintly, the only sound in the thick silence that followed. Jamie knew this wasn't just confrontation, it was humiliation staged for an audience, and the audience was watching closely. Jamie tightened his grip on the phone, holding on to control even as the anger rose. "Look, I purchased my ticket online. You scanned it when I walked in." "That's the truth." The manager tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "Funny. People who pay don't usually hesitate. Makes me wonder if you slipped past when no one was looking." The implication hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. Jamie's chest burned. "I'm not lying. Why twist it like I've done something wrong? Why so defensive?" The manager shot back, voice dripping with false calm. "If you're honest, then proving it shouldn't bother you." His words weren't just directed at Jamie, they were designed for the onlookers, framing him as the one at fault. Jamie felt the sting of it deep. The years of education, the career, the success, none of it mattered here. To this man, he was simply a suspect. He forced his jaw to unclench. "I'm here like everyone else. Nothing more, nothing less." But the manager's smirk carried the weight of accusation. "We'll see about that." And with every syllable, the narrative shifted, painting Jamie not as a paying customer, but as a liar caught in the act. The space around them thickened as more people paused. Phones lifted discreetly, recording from angles that caught Jamie's face, but missed the hostility behind the manager's. A whisper floated from the back. "He must have tried sneaking in." Another voice muttered, "Always some kind of trouble." Jamie heard them all, every hushed judgment slicing deeper than the manager's words. Others avoided his eyes, staring at the floor or fidgeting with their tickets, their silence speaking louder than accusations. They wouldn't intervene. They wouldn't challenge what was happening. The glow of screens caught his peripheral vision, the knowledge sinking in. His humiliation was now content. A story for strangers to scroll past, reduced to clicks and comments about yet another angry black man. Each passing second tightened the noose of attention, and Jamie stood at the center, a spectacle made against his will. From the crowd, a teenager's laugh broke the tension, cruel and cutting. "Man, he's trying to sneak into a movie. Can't even afford a ticket?" The joke was cheap, but it spread like fire. A few chuckled nervously, others smirked behind their hands. The mockery wrapped around Jamie, stripping away what little dignity he had left. He turned his head toward the voice, eyes locking briefly with the boy who looked no older than 17. The smirk on the teen's face said it all. This wasn't about truth, it was about entertainment. Jamie's lips parted, but no words came. What could he say that wouldn't twist into another caricature for them to laugh at? The boy leaned back against the wall, satisfied, while the crowd's perception shifted further. The label of troublemaker no longer whispered. It was etched into the moment. Jamie felt heat rise in his chest, not from shame, but from the crushing familiarity of it. The treatment wasn't new. It was the same script replayed in grocery stores, at airports, on city streets. But here, in front of strangers, it became unbearable. His heart thudded with a bitter realization. In this instant, he wasn't a man with a career, with family, with worth. He was cast as a criminal, reduced to suspicion alone. The word echoed in his head, criminal. He could see it in the way people shifted, the way they clutched their belongings tighter, the way space subtly widened between him and them. His dignity slipped through his fingers, and no calm explanation could hold it together. Jamie spoke quietly, his voice trembling with control. "I came here for a movie." Not this. But the theater's silence gave no reply. Only the weight of judgment, pressing down like chains that refused to break. Finally, Jamie raised his phone high, the glowing screen displaying the unmistakable barcode of his purchased ticket. "Here, this is proof." For a flicker of a moment, the crowd leaned in, the truth undeniable in front of them. But the manager shook his head slowly, lips curled into disdain. "Screenshots can be faked. Anyone can pull up an image and claim it's real." The dismissal wasn't about evidence. It was about power. Jamie's hand shook slightly, not from fear, but from fury caged within. He had given everything required, more than anyone else here, yet it was still not enough. And as the crowd exchanged glances, Jamie realized it never would be. The pressure mounted until it cracked. Jamie's voice, steady until now, rose sharp with fury. "You've got the proof. You've had it since I walked in. Why are you still dragging this out?" The crowd leaned closer, hungry for escalation, some whispering, others recording every word. The manager smirked, as if this was the outburst he'd been waiting for. Jamie's hands trembled, popcorn spilling at his feet, his mask of restraint falling away. The anger wasn't just about tonight. It was about years of being questioned, doubted, and criminalized for existing, and now the storm has finally broken. Enough. Jamie's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, low but steady. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled back the hood that had shadowed his face all night. Gasps rippled instantly. The once mocked troublemaker was now unmistakable, the man who had headlined blockbuster films, who graced magazine covers, who millions admired worldwide. It's Jamie Rivers," someone whispered, disbelief heavy in their tone. Phones rose higher, screens capturing every angle, the shift in atmosphere undeniable. Just moments ago he had been dismissed, humiliated, treated as less. Now the audience realized the man standing at the center of this confrontation wasn't just any customer. He was a Hollywood icon, forced to endure public humiliation for nothing more than the color of his skin. Jamie looked around, his eyes burning into the silence. "So this is what it takes? Recognition, fame? Before I'm treated like I belong?" The words cut sharper than the reveal itself. For years he had lived with quiet slights, whispers, assumptions. But tonight the mask was gone, and the world was watching, and the man who had staged this entire scene suddenly wasn't the one holding power anymore. The manager's mouth opened, but no words came. His authority drained in an instant, leaving him pale under the theater lights. You're that actor," he stammered, fumbling for control. "I didn't realize—" Jamie didn't move, didn't blink. He let the silence sit heavy, the weight of the crowd pressing down. The manager's confidence cracked. Just minutes before, he had strutted with power, but now his footing slipped as recognition set in. He hadn't just berated a customer. He had berated someone famous, and every second of it had been witnessed. His voice faltered again, weaker this time. "I was only doing my job." But his job wasn't the excuse he thought it was. Not anymore. Every phone in the room was raised now, little red lights blinking like tiny recording eyes. What had started as quiet whispers was now an undeniable viral moment in motion. One bystander murmured, "This is going straight online." Another shook their head. "Man, this is racial profiling caught live." "He's done." The manager's face flushed as he realized nothing could be erased. His words, his accusations, his smirks, captured from every angle, ready to explode across social media. Jamie glanced at the cameras briefly, his chest rising with a mix of anger and resolve. He hadn't asked to be an example, but the truth was out now, and the proof could no longer be twisted. The story had shifted hands, from whispers to the world. The hush broke. Voices rose, not in whispers, but in outrage. "Leave him alone! He showed his ticket!" one woman snapped. "He paid like everyone else." "Why were you only checking him?" another man demanded. For the first time all night, the crowd wasn't silent. They weren't complicit. They were witnesses who had finally found their voices. The teenager who had laughed earlier lowered his phone, shame flickering across his face. The same crowd that once fueled Jamie's humiliation was now turning on the man who had orchestrated it. Each protest chipped away at the manager's control, shifting the balance of power until the room no longer belonged to him. And Jamie stood at the center not as a victim, but as someone whose truth had ignited something larger. The manager's hands fluttered nervously. It was a misunderstanding. Procedure? Nothing personal. His excuses dripped weakly, collapsing under the weight of every phone recording his desperation. The more he spoke, the smaller he seemed, his earlier bravado gone. No one else was stopped, a voice shot back. Only him. The crowd wasn't buying it. Each word he uttered only deepened his guilt, every excuse another reminder of the injustice that had just played out. The truth was plain. This wasn't about rules. It never had been. Jamie's voice rose, steady and commanding. You didn't see me as a man. You saw me as a suspect. My skin spoke louder to you than my humanity. The crowd hushed, leaning in, phones still lifted. I'm standing here humiliated for buying a ticket, something anyone else could do without question. Fame doesn't erase the racism that follows me. If I weren't recognized, you'd still believe I didn't belong. His words rang with conviction, not anger, a dignity that outshone disgrace, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was an awakening. A voice called from the back, strong and clear. We're with you. Others followed. This isn't right. You deserve better. Speak on it. What began as one man's humiliation now swelled into something greater. Strangers became supporters, their unity buzzing like electricity through the room. Jamie stood taller, not because of celebrity, but because his truth had struck a nerve. This was more than a movie night gone wrong. It was a message, undeniable and unshakable. And as the crowd's energy rose, Jamie realized the moment was no longer about survival. It was about transformation. We sincerely apologize. The statement flashed across headlines plastered on every social feed. The cinema chain could no longer bury the truth. The viral video had spread like wildfire. Millions demanding answers. Corporate words dripped with rehearsed regret. But beneath them was an admission. Systemic racism had poisoned their service. Comment sections filled with anger, some with relief. Finally, they're being called out, one user typed. Jamie read the apology once, then set his phone aside. He knew an official letter wouldn't heal the wound, but it signaled something larger. The silence had been broken. The manager's downfall came swiftly. His termination notice hit the news within days. His name trending for all the wrong reasons. Unacceptable behavior, the chain's spokesperson said. Their tone clipped. But the real verdict came from the public, neighbors turning cold, strangers spitting his name with disgust. The man who once wielded power in whispers and stares now carried shame like a scarlet letter. Jamie didn't celebrate his collapse. He only thought of the countless others who had endured similar treatment with no cameras to catch it, no spotlight to demand accountability. This time, at least the mask was ripped away. Days later, Jamie returned to the same cinema. Not for the movie, but for closure. As he walked out, dozens clapped. Some called his name, others simply shouted, "We've got your back." It wasn't fame that lifted him in that moment, but recognition of his humanity. He had entered those doors shamed, doubted, mocked. He left them with dignity intact, head unbowed, the echo of applause carrying him farther than the humiliation ever could. Across the country, the clip sparked a movement. Hashtags trended, were seen and heard, but justice in public spaces. Talk shows debated it, podcasts dissected it, classrooms studied it. What happened in one? Theater now symbolized something far greater. How everyday racism festers in silence until someone dares to challenge it. Jamie's confrontation became a mirror for millions, forcing them to ask, if it can happen to him, how many more suffer unseen? Jamie's words closed the chapter, his voice steady. Fame doesn't protect me from racism, but maybe this moment will protect someone else. It wasn't a resignation. It was resolved, a reminder that justice isn't the end of a story, it's the spark for the ones still waiting to be told. Jamie's eyes lift, steady and unshaken. What about you? He asked directly. If you had stood there watching it unfold, what choice would you have made? Silence or courage? His voice lingers, urging reflection beyond entertainment. I know my story isn't the only one, he continues. Drop your experiences with racism or discrimination in the comments. I promise I'll read every single word. This isn't just a video, it's a movement, Jamie adds. Like, subscribe, and share so these racism stories reach further. Together, we turn one moment into real awareness, real change.